In today's world of work, speed, scale, and systems dominate every conversation. But beneath the dashboards and business reviews lies something far more powerful and far more ignored: emotion. In our next episode of The People Blueprint, we explore emotions not as soft skills, but as strategic levers for culture, leadership, and performance, with a guest who straddles both worlds: the structured systems of corporate HR and the deep, messy terrain of human emotion. Ankit Jhamb is a learning leader, certified therapist, and a vocal advocate for psychological safety in organizations. His perspective is not only sharp and rooted in reality, it is unapologetically human. This isn't a conversation about well-being. It is a conversation about what makes us human and how organizations must adapt if they want to stay relevant, resilient, and real. This is the People Blueprint. Welcome to the People Blueprint, where we unpack the future of work through the lens of learning, leadership, and people strategy. I'm your host, Sheila Vasan Singla. In a world of spreadsheets, scorecards, and high-stakes strategy, emotions are often treated as distractions, or worse, weaknesses. But what if they are actually our greatest source of insight and connection? Our guest, Ankit Jhamb, is someone who brings both analytical clarity and emotional depth to people and emotions. In this episode, we explore the emotional undercurrents of the workplace and how they show up in leadership, performance, and everyday choices. Welcome, Ankit, to the People Blueprint.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Happy to be here.
Ankit, I'd like to start off with, what is the role of emotions in a high-performance world? So what I want to ask you is that in this world of spreadsheets, AI, technology, do emotions play a role at all? Or are they finally going to get phased out? No emotions in the workplace.
A fantastic start to the chat. The answer somewhere lies in the question. We're human beings, there has to be a role emotions have to play, spiritually, philosophically. But to be more specific practically, I see this as very differently. We can't be at a stage where we don't learn to process. Not being able to process or depending too much on AI or data itself is a coping mechanism. Itself is intellectualizing the emotions and it's escaping from it. Do you have a choice which the body produces without your permission? As simply as that. Emotions have a root in the anatomy, in the physiology, and if you study the science behind it. So something which does not need our permission to originate in the body, like hunger, we're debating that will they exist or not. And that to me answers the question that of course they will exist, of course they will be there. But human beings have mastered the art of rationalizing, defending, coping up with emotions, but not processing them. Just the way in the last part you said that, are we feeling what we are feeling? And that to me is the biggest problem statement people, families, relationships, organizations right now are facing.
You know, you've always said this line, and I've wanted to ask you, explain it to me more, where I know that I'm feeling something, but I don't allow myself to feel it. So I am angry and I want to biff somebody on the nose, but I don't allow myself to go through all the emotions attached to that anger. What does that do to us as human beings? And what does it really mean when you say, learn to feel the feeling? What do you mean by that?
It's a difficult one intellectually to explain, but it's easier when you start practicing it. Something happens in the body. Can you make space for it? Can you be with it? And being with the emotion is difficult because we don't know how to be with an emotion without acting it out. So I feel angry, so I must snap back or must shut down or must do 100 those things which I've been taught to do or my personality type has evolved to do. But fundamentally, it's a response of the body. It's an increase in heart rate. It's a restlessness in hands and legs. It's a change in blood circulation.
True.
Just being able to tune and to see is that the sensation which the body is facing, feeling, and let me make space for that. But it freaks us out. Any strong emotion, any positive or happy or negative emotions, any strong emotion will mobilize something in the body. And people confuse that with the call to action. If you read the science of emotion, it's a message which the body gives you, and sometimes you just have to sit, shut up, pause, and listen to it.
So Tell me, Ankit, what is the difference between knowing an emotion and actually feeling it?
Yeah.
For example, if I'm in a meeting and I'm feeling fearful because the group around me is very alpha, they're bullying,
Yeah.
they're, they're very aggressive, then I know that I'm feeling fearful. But how do I actually feel it?
A beautiful question. When something's happening to you, something surfaces in the body. What surfaces in the body is to protect you, is for you to cope up. So if you're prone to bullying and somebody is cracking a joke at you and harassing you, you'll either shut down or snap back or crack one more joke or raise the voice or sound aggressive. That's what your trained response is, as the science would suggest. Okay. The trained responses sometimes have a great payoff. So you've lived with that pattern, that trend. But then comes a point it blocks your growth. That comes a point where, in spite of the trained responses, you still fear those kind of people, which means that the fear still has a relevance. It still stays in the body. So what comes up in therapy post the event is then you ask somebody, for example, that what does the fear tell you about? You say, I feel weak and I feel small. And then that's where the growth or the breakthrough opens up, that when this happens, unconsciously the explanation is I feel singled out and I see myself as this little child being mocked at everyone. You see how beautiful and therapeutic that could be for people. The responses after a few times of processing that emotion start to evolve. When you say start to evolve, which means now their heart rate is less wilder, they're less palpitation, they're more in control of the emotion. It might not happen in the moment, Sheila. We're not wise, equipped, resourceful, and monk enough to just
Do it
shed the
there and then.
conditioning. But listening and going and tuning back, when I feel fear, this heart rate goes up, this starts to palpitate, and then I start to struggle to stammer, or some people become very aggressive. Just seeing that part of you, that how have you evolved to cope up with that momentarily stress is also awareness, and that's the work of processing the emotion. So next time when this happens to you and you feel the same, you're more comfortable feeling. That is like scuba diving, it's
Yeah,
like
got it.
skydiving.
Got
The
it.
heart rate goes up, but
Yeah.
the next time you do it, you know what this is. That's knowing and that's feeling. The first part, when you said knowing the emotion, yeah, you go read books, listen to people, you know so much about emotions, you know amygdala hijacking, neocortex, prefrontal cortex, endorphins. That's just knowledge. Does it help you in the moment of crisis? God knows, no.
It's so interesting listening to you, because there was a time that my heart rate would go up and
Yeah.
I would have to tell my husband to say, just
Yeah,
come and sit
yeah,
with me for a
yeah,
few minutes. I
yeah.
want to hold your hand.
Yeah.
And over a period of time,
Yeah.
I learned to recognize
Yeah.
and say, oh, this is what triggers me.
Absolutely.
Or this is, oh, it's coming on now. So let me do something
Absolutely.
to deal with it.
Precisely.
So you're right. Unless you feel it, and you can't learn from it in between the two instances. How interesting. But a lot of us don't process our emotions. We're working.
Yeah.
So, whatever I feel at the workplace, I don't go back and process it and think about it. And what we think about it is I had a horrible boss and he made me feel terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't process what I went through.
Beautiful.
So, what happens if I don't process these emotions?
The reality is that everyone processes in not the right fashion. Let me create a scenario. Something happens at work in that similar situation. Do you stop thinking about it? No.
Not at all.
People drive back and they're overthinking. They can't sleep and they're having dreams and they're thinking, अगर ऐसा होता तो मैं ये कर देता, मैं नौकरी छोड़ देता हूँ, etc. So you're processing it. Okay, the brain is still processing, the ego is processing, the mind's processing it. It's just not the right way to process. You're engaged in the intellectual fancy of the brain, but the brain makes stories or mind makes stories and you're stuck, which is called sometimes overthinking, and that leads to anxiety. People just don't know that the way you've decided unconsciously or you've been taught or trained or whatsoever to process what has happened is without your choice. When you put choice into processing, something happened, I'm going to speak to someone, write something, structure the flow of emotion and see what comes out. That is the choice which you made to process. So ऐसा नहीं है कि दिमाग शट करके आगे चला गया है. अगर वो शट करके आगे भी चला गया है तो वो 4 दिन बाद तो कहानी वापस आती है.
Of course आती है. एक बार तो नींद भी नहीं आती है.
Absolutely.
Because you're constantly
and
thinking
that's the
about
evidence
it.
procedure to see that any strong incident which has a merit for you because the body created a reaction at a cellular level, which means that the body felt something. It could be a response from the past or some unreconciled trauma, which is why the body is creating a reaction, and it's your job to listen. When you start listening is when growth happens. Otherwise, you can continue to live in defense mechanisms.
And I think as people, when we don't process our emotions and we get into positions where we are leading people, where
Yeah.
we are managing people,
Yeah.
where we collaborating,
Yeah.
then somewhere along the way, it really creeps into all our interactions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
We see ghosts when none exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
see uh, enemies where there are none.
Yeah.
We see slights when none are meant to be
Yeah.
slights.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of those things just kind of creep in.
Yeah. And that's the suppression, that's the shadow, that's where emotions have a way of expressing themselves. Either they'll come out in the body, or some passivity, or some systemic issue or cultural issue. Your suppressed anger, suppressed irritation, suppressed fear of failure, suppressed shame comes out in form of control mechanism, excessive perfectionism, setting high standards for yourself, inability to tolerate mistakes. What is all of that? These are not intellectual fancies. There's an emotional current which you haven't dealt with. And then, of course, the highly competitive scenario continues to trigger you, continues to surface out what already sits in the middle or sits at the center.
Center.
Yeah. Performance appraisals are the new parallel to report cards sometimes. But the thing is that our interpretation of such processes is still report card. One bad year, which means that I failed and I struggled. People associate and read too much basis a rating or a bonus, and they aren't able to de-link their self-worth with who they are at work. It's almost as if it's the same thing. If I'm terrible at work, I'm a horrible
Loser
human being.
in
Yeah,
life.
yeah, that.
So here is a point of view I have. We have been taught that at the workplace you need to be strong, you need to be stoic, you need to be controlled, you need to make sure that you're not wearing your heart on your sleeve. So there's a lot of suppression of emotions that you were talking about. It is generally a corporate mask that we
Yeah.
wear. So why is it so hard for us to talk about things like grief, pain, fear, sorrow
Yeah.
at the workplace?
But I think the mask is everywhere. We are told the same thing when something happens at home. Kids are told not to cry at school. We are yet to crack the balance of how much to express, when to express, what to express. Nobody knows sometimes. So the masks for us, if you see, they start very early. The expression of a raw emotion is never given a fertile land, even in childhood sometimes, unconsciously so. So when we grow up in the society and you realize, I mean, people get embarrassed when they cry watching an emotional movie in a cinema hall. The first response research suggests is they look towards right. कि मुझे कोई देख तो नहीं रहा था जब आँख से आंसू निकला. So vulnerability has never been celebrated in the society. Bravery, strength, and the stoic straight face has been celebrated. It's rewarded because that's the definition or larger mental model of strength. And it's only when you hit 30, 25 or 38 or life-changing circumstances, you realize it's not working. I feel something, but I have to project. The more you come to the terms of the mask, the more you start to see the mask as a mask, not as me. You start to live a dual life. You start to feel the pain that I'm not feeling strength, but I must project it. And that's that feeling. I mean, you've gone through it. I've gone through it sometimes. So you realize that duality has to be accepted at some point of time, that we've not made safe spaces, even our houses, leave corporates. So, and does it mean that people end up crying everywhere when they feel sorry about things? Of course it does not. The answer to that is, we must teach people emotional regulation. We must talk about to them how to process, and
Processing comes back again.
It goes back to that emotional literacy, a part of it would have done that. And if people cry or people express something, teaching people the expression of emotion itself is an art.
You know, I must share something very personal with you. We were very strong during COVID, managed it beautifully. We were all a very buoyant team. Even though it impacted our revenues, we were still soaring. Everything was great. During the Delta variant, we lost a very loved colleague.
Yeah.
And the 6 months after that, I felt I was being held up by Band-Aid. That's how I was feeling. And I remember it was either December or Jan. We were having an all hands meet and I was addressing the team. And I think I just broke down on that call. saying, it's been so difficult for me to get over the death of our colleague that I can barely hold it together. And it's been exhausting, it's been mentally debilitating for me to go through these motions. And I don't even know what prompted me to be so vulnerable and so open about the pain I was feeling. But something amazing happened. Everybody on that call opened out and talked about the pain that they were feeling. And that entire process was so cathartic. But it happened because we are a smaller company. It happened because of the culture of the company. So sometimes, do you believe that we suppress emotion under the mask of professionalism?
So many times, and that's such a wonderfully articulated statement you said, that do we suppress emotions in terms of professionalism? Absolutely. One must ask, what is professionalism for you? And people would say being serious, being stoic, being nice, being courteous, being mannered. Nobody's talking about being genuine, but authentic, doing justice to what I'm feeling inside. See, in a cricket match, when you're playing out there at the sports field, do people have the liberty to cry and vent and be all emotional there? No. When there is a place of performance, which is a workplace, the expectation is performance. But when you disconnect from that, is the culture, the organization enabling you to process, which means you need to have systems and performances. You won't be able to immediately answer for the human predicament that why is the society so alpha. I can't run a culture intervention to reduce an alpha. It's sometimes so genetic predisposition that you can't fight the beast there. But you can definitely make systems and processes, and that's what we as an organization and many other organizations have taken. We are calling out, we are sharing symptoms of depression, anxiety. There are sessions, there are counseling helps, there are therapeutic helps. We also have a policy where people can consult the specialist, which is part of their larger package. And that's how you plan systems and processes. But where the contradiction is that if culturally the conversations are not happening around such things, and even if you have systems and processes, the uptake and the adoption is not there. So some level of conversation, normalization, such as terms of psychological safety, emotional vulnerability, showing people that how vulnerability plays an important role in having a difficult conversation. You want to let an employee go and you want to give someone poor rating or a bad rating or a below expectation whatsoever. How do you tap into the power of vulnerability? How do you be more genuine and not very scripted? The challenge which I feel to the previous question, you said that we've mistaken English and language and competence on English as empathy. Just because I've learned to say I understand, Sheila, it does not mean that you feel empathy. I know where you're coming from. I apologize and I see what you must be feeling. It's people have learned to see through it. People know. People have a very strong eye to separate from true authenticity. So people are saying that it doesn't mind which language you use. Kam se kam sachai aur dil se to bolo. And fundamentally you're reclaiming and now trying to figure out that how do we make workplaces more real?
And that was going to be my question, that how does a leader model vulnerability in an authentic way? What should a leader be doing?
It's a beautiful question. I might not have the right answer because sometimes I'm also figuring this out.
Of course.
But I'm very clear on one thing, that if I have to capitalize on any potential vulnerability has for me and my teams, उस potential के बीच में मैं खुद नहीं आ सकता. I can't be expecting to be so selfish and use vulnerability without being vulnerable myself, without shedding my guards, without lowering my defenses, without learning to apologize. And that's how I started. I learned to apologize to my team members. Sometimes when I think I took the wrong judgment, I call them next day that I was off and I think that I made an unsafe space for you and you couldn't really express what you wanted to. So I'm going to listen to you this time and I'm sorry about it. When you owe up and when you open the roads for upward feedback to come to you, or just leave upward feedback, it's an American jargon, but just anyone in the team who could come to you and say that आपकी वो बात पसंद नहीं आई, आपसे डर लगता है. And that happened to me. And when that happens, no, it's not a sign that you're a bad person. It's a sign that you've made safety. Two people in the team they are still with me. They once
that they'll
told,
still come and tell you.
they told me that you are
despite-
intimidating.
Yeah.
That आपसे डर लगता है बात करने में. So I asked them, किस बात से डर लगता है? आवाज़ से, दाढ़ी से, बात करने के तरीके से, फीडबैक देता हूँ. जैसे आप बोलते बोलते आपके चेहरे पे कोई एक्सप्रेशन ही नहीं होता. You just talk straight face, and sometimes we don't know what to perceive out of it. So I understood that they perceive information a certain way. But our victory was that till date they have the channels open to come and tell me that आपसे डर लगता है.
Yeah, but if you were to make this happen at an organizational level, it would mean a lot of learning on part of the
Absolutely.
leaders.
Absolutely.
One, to be comfortable with their own emotion.
Yeah.
Two, to learn how to process emotion. And three, to allow people to also feel and process their emotion.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
You see, corporate cultures and the evolution of culture, to my mind, is not just sole responsibility of an organization. It's a call and sometimes indication of personal leadership and personal evolution. Organizations which have done well are the ones where people themselves have had breakthrough moments of personal revelations and self awareness, and they've fought that battle within. When leaders, not just the titles, as human beings in all pockets of life, go through some sort of transformational journey, as an outcome, the culture benefits. When you're putting people where they're not going through any personal transformational journey, and you're putting people into a culture strictly explaining that this is the expectation, they only do it with compliance. Like a child learns to comply and take care of the younger sibling because there is a reward. If not, there's going to be a punishment. And that's not a change. That's also a form of suppression. If the fear is high, sometimes people say the right stuff, behave the right way, but their suppression of emotion leaks out somewhere. When leaders, and I strongly believe sets about top 10% of the leaders, also true for families, if the head of the family goes through a personal transformation, it impacts the culture of
Everybody.
the house.
Yeah.
Same microeconomics and macroeconomics. So if top 10% of the leaders genuinely focus on personal transformations, then they realize that the trickle down effect on teams is a consequential item. Right now, the problem is that we are trying to focus on culture, get people right, large populations, without even knowing that are the leaders in any organization going through something personal, breakthrough moments, which is why coaching, which is why culture of coaching specifically is extremely important.
Listening to you talk, what I'm realizing is that you're saying that emotional literacy is not just about well-being.
Yeah.
It is actually strategic.
Absolutely.
Tell me something. When you have emotional literacy, how does it impact your high achievers? What does it do to them?
See, there's a beautiful link between emotional literacy and productivity and performance. Let me build the business case for you. As HR professionals, as L&D professionals, also in the executive team meetings, what the management is trying to solve from a people point of view is people experience. Okay. Is there any experience which is only intellectual?
Not at all. It's
Experience
all
is
emotional.
it's absolutely. It's
Yeah.
all emotional.
Yeah.
So are you trying to, if you're trying to reduce attrition, it's also an experience. If you're trying to make onboarding better, that's also an experience.
It's all about how I
When you try and talk about Josh Berson's, Gartner's employee engagement models and sense of belonging, which people feel, all right, what are you talking about? It's not an intellectual relationship which I have with Microsoft Outlook. It's a body's experience. Okay. So businesses for time immemorial have always tried to solve for business problems which were basically emotional problems, but we were trying to solve it through the mind and frameworks. Hence, people say that, listen, attrition is not just a data point, it's a poor experience which somebody's had. Okay, and that experience must have created some trauma. It's an indication of culture, how people are dealt with. The trust on performance appraisal systems is what? It's an emotional problem statement. It's not an intellectual problem statement. If it was, Sheila, I would explain bell curve, calibration, statistic moderation to people, and people would be
accept
convinced.
it, of
Correct?
course.
But people feel betrayed and people feel disengaged. उनको लगता है कि मेरे साथ ठीक नहीं हुआ, जायज़ नहीं हुआ, fair evaluation नहीं हुआ. That's what globally we've been hearing from performance appraisal mechanisms. Okay, that itself is an emotional problem statement. So you're building a system which is based upon transparency and fairness, so that people feel belonged to that process. It's an emotional problem statement. So in my lens, all you're trying, even tech adoption sometimes is a habit emotional problem
Absolutely.
statement.
Absolutely.
There will always be emotion. People get in cultures sometimes in patriarchy and sometimes in very strong alpha organizations, they confuse understanding emotions with being emotional. Being emotional could be an houseboat, could be an impulse, could be a weakness, could be a trend and pattern in a personality. That I'm an emotional person, so मेरे उल्टे जवाब निकल जाते हैं, मैं कभी कभी बदतमीज हो जाता हूँ, मैं चुप हो जाता हूँ, शट डाउन हो जाता हूँ. That could be a pattern or a preference.
That's being emotional.
That's being emotional. But being emotional does not mean that we don't honor emotions, does not mean that we don't help people understand. You're collectively at a macro level, an organization is always trying to solve for an emotional problem statement. You pinpoint even a customer experience metrics that, when call centers or voice processes, also in professional services or also in healthcare, people ask, was it a wow feeling? Is wow intellectual feeling? Absolutely not.
No.
Wow is an emotional experience which the body went through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have enough data and evidence to understand that the business is only trying to put all their guards and money to get the emotional experiences right for their customers, people, and stakeholders.
And yet we don't talk about emotions.
And yet we are running away from it.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're right, when you talk about customer experience, you're not intellectualizing it. You want your customer to go away
Absolutely
saying,
not.
oh, wow.
Data insights are trying to crystallize human behavior, and their ability to crystallize human behavior cannot at any point of time be devoid of not understanding what the person feels.
How is collation of information happening?
There are too many ways right now. You could integrate various biomechanisms, your gizmos and gadgets, and feed the information. Pulse monitors, moodometers, surveys mechanism can generate a lot of data about what the organization and people are feeling about it.
Okay.
There's also mechanism where you could capture vitamin D deficiency, how many steps have you taken, SpO2, oxygen levels, stress levels, and you can predict and create a model out of it. A friend of mine is doing it already to see that how many percentage people are going through stress levels. Okay, and then basis that, predictive models have been built to also predict attrition. That 35% of these people might attrite. You could the information could flow in from Outlook, the information could flow in from various mobile apps, health apps. Your Apple could be synced to various models, and then the data flows. We have a lot of data which answers for what people are feeling. There is absolutely no dearth. It's just one few clicks, one tech strategy which takes to integrate all the data. The bigger question is that now that you have all the data, you know that some people are overworked. You can see the data. Some people might be attriting in the next 3-6 months. You can see the data. Some people are going through depressive tendencies. That also data is available. Are you equipped to hold the space with that conversation? Have you worked on yourself to reduce your judgment? यार depression करते रहते हैं, काम तो करना ही पड़ता है. Have you overcome that typical Indian mentality of judging and ridiculing people when they go through mental well-being? And that's the big debate which is happening. If you speak to a 50-year-old or a 45-year-old, if you speak to a 25-year-old, they will show you two different views.
Absolutely.
They think your depression kuch nahi hota, but that 25-year-old demands for their own space. That hota hai, humko mehsoos ho raha hai. You might not agree with the reasons why I'm feeling anxious, but you are debating what's happening in my body, and I have the right to call out what's happening in my body. That's the gap.
I'm going to ask you something quite controversial. First of all, can an emotionally aware organization or an organization that accepts that emotional literacy is critical, can it be high performing? Can it be strong? Can it be resilient? That's my first question. Yeah. My second question is that all this talk of emotions, are we just becoming weaker?
Excellent. Let me address the first one. The second one, I'll ask you a question to answer the second question. See, in my personal view, a sustainable model of high performance will always be built upon emotional literacy. There will never be a time, cannot be a time when people are exhausted, burnt out, and they are high performers and they continue to be doing so. Okay? There can't be that. Break it down into daily routine. How does a high performance culture looks like? Focus on quality, some level of resilience, some level of not giving up, and also building good relationships. Okay, all of this will contribute to some high performance culture. All right, and then you can also add a tinge of people's ability to upskill themselves. All right, each one has a team or a pattern of emotional vulnerability. Your ability to learn is linked with how stressed you are. Your ability to manage stress is linked to how resilient you are. All of this is not a game which you play only in the head. So when there is emotional fertile space, people have the space to emote and they understand emotions. So do the leaders. Your expression's better, your guards are down, your defense mechanisms are lesser. Now I'm not worried about what people may think about me. It's all right to make mistakes. It's all right to tell people that I don't know, and hence you reduce the error rates. There's an excellent example of hospitals and healthcare where nurses, when they didn't feel psychologically safe, they didn't call out bad decisions of surgeons and people died. And when they were asked that why, he said that हमको लगा हम छोटे हैं, हमारी औकात नहीं है, our skills not there, but their experience was ridiculed. So when you start to lean into the real sense of inclusion, which also is a bodily experience, okay, not an intellectual experience, you start dropping down defense mechanisms of people. And when defense mechanisms go down, which basically means cognition and emotional freedom to now enjoy work, to bring to people, collaborate with each other. Most large firms are trying to solve for collaborations. A CEO will only have 2 to 3 major challenges. How do I articulate my strategy and take people to see my vision? Number one. Number two, how do I bring people together to collaborate? Okay. And number three, how do we translate values into behavior? Most large organizations believe in these frameworks. Okay. Tell me any one of them is intellectual. Absolutely not. There's no intellect behind this. You don't need very high IQ to understand how to articulate care. It's behavior.
I must share something that I used to do at Chrysalis a long time back. We were a very small team, and when a team member came in looking upset, looking angry, we'd all get very hassled as a team because it rubs off. That negative emotion rubs off on everyone, right? So sometimes we couldn't ask because the person would see it as intrusive. So we couldn't say, what happened? Did you have a fight at home? Are you upset with us? We couldn't do it. So what we decided was that if the person was upset with something other than work, they would come into the office, and we had a whole series of very funny hats. They would pick a hat up and they would wear it. So it was a signal to everybody.
This is what I'm going.
I'm going through a bad time. Just don't interfere. Don't get in my way. It's got nothing to do with you. It's me. Two things happened. One, it was a non-verbal physical signal to us to say something has gone wrong, but it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
All right? Yeah. So it was a behavior. The second thing that happened was that when people wore this hat, because it was so ridiculous, imagine I'm wearing a sari, wearing nice jewelry, and I'm wearing a hat which makes me look like a, like a witch. Automatically, it would lighten the mood.
Yeah.
Because you can't sit for very long wearing a funny looking hat and be upset with life.
Yeah.
So sometimes we didn't even address the emotion.
Absolutely.
But you address the behavior.
Yeah.
So do you think in large organizations, it makes more sense to focus on behaviors and allow for behaviors which are coping rather than saying, let's talk about emotions?
Sheila, you answered the question. You didn't address the emotion by addressing the behavior, but in turn, you addressed the emotion. A respectful expression and channel to the emotion was provided, and hence the behavior change was there. Now, imagine a scenario where that let out or that mechanism is not available to people to express what they were feeling without talking. It stays inside. Okay, it causes some sort of conflict and a gap in understanding between what you might be feeling and what I might be expecting. All right. So you could focus on the behavior, but if you are not channelizing the emotion, then it's going to create frustration, stress, and anxiety. All of us have been trained to display a behavior. Let's say behavior of respect and charm and courtesy. All right, it happens to you a day. Your muscle memory is so strong that even if people create a scene and throw a tantrum, you will still say it nicely, but the body remembers. And then happens a second day, the body remembers. Happens a third day, fourth day, for 2 years, 3 years, the body remembers. And that's what creates an existential narrative that I'm not up for this anymore. Then you hit a life 25, 28, 30, that what is happening? I can't be taking from people. Where is that narrative coming from? You see, what you hold back drafts a narrative in one way or the other. Versus organizations, when they take calls and draw complete clear boundaries that, no, people can't disrespect our people. We will throw people out. It's all right to let go of people. It's all right. It's all right to draw the line and have difficult conversations, even with customers and clients who pay for you. you think that this is a good chance. So आपके behalf पे या तो कोई और लड़े जिससे आपको respected महसूस हो. Or the system creates a framework for you to understand the emotion yourself. If not, in both the cases, which is sometimes the sad case, it stays within you, and then it does short circuits the career. Or if not, then it drafts out an alternative self. There हमारे दो चेहरे हैं. अब हमारा गुस्सा कहीं और निकलता है क्योंकि काम करने जाते हैं तो हम तहजीब से जाते हैं, बट जब सूट उतरता है घर आते हैं तो हम पैसिव अग्रेसिव और फ्रस्ट्रेटेड हैं. That's how people live two lives all the time, and integration for that is very difficult, because in your 40s and your 35 and your 38, when you have these two alternative selves, it's very difficult to make sense of it.
Interesting. So, Ankit, I know you're going to perhaps jump down my throat if I say this, but all this talk of emotion, I sometimes wonder whether we are building softer, weaker generations. And I'll tell you why. When I was young and I would tell my mother that I'm not feeling too well, she'd say, just go have a bath, you'll feel better. Or if I'd say I'm feeling a little down, I'm feeling scared, she'd say, come on, shake yourself up. You have to be stronger. And I think that helped me be stronger. Of course, I felt emotions, but I didn't quake, or I didn't shake, or I didn't fall apart when really bad stuff happened in my life. I went through it. I just pushed my way through it. So my question to you is that if we pander so much to emotion, and I'm using the word pander specifically, if we pander so much to emotion, are we weakening our children and the future generations?
Yeah, I think you've addressed the elephant, and it's a thing which always comes up in coaching conversations, in training workshops, in almost all boardroom conversations also, that are we raising a weak generation? And my personal view there is, and it comes in form of a question to you, when you say soft, what does it mean? What is softness for you? What are you visualizing when you say softness?
I think for me, when I say soft, I'm talking about people who can't deal with the trials and tribulations of life. Now, if at every point of time you say, oh my God, I can't deal with this, I'm emotional, I have an anxiety attack, I'm feeling depressed, then how do you go through life? Because these times are not getting easier, they're just becoming more and more turbulent.
See, it's a beautiful fear-based mechanism. When we tell people that how would you deal with life, we are indirectly asking them to suppress it, because we are scared that अगर ये इस चक्कर में पड़ गया तो ये काम कब करेगा, अगर ये इस चक्कर में पड़े तो ज़िंदगी कैसे जिएगा, ज़िंदगी तो बहुत डिफ़िकल्ट है. It has an element of protection. The parents, the community, the so-called hierarchies of the society, they teach you to cope up in their own respective way because it worked for them. Sometimes it worked for you also. But what remains as a reality is it's not working anymore. Tell me one Gen Z, tell me one 20-year-old, 25-year-old who says that, हाँ मैं भुला देता हूँ, or I'm just going to move on. No, if they say that I can't cope up, we must appreciate that that is how they are coping up, by calling it out. Our fear is valid that if they pander, or if they overthink, or if they debate and think about the emotion and their condition too much, it will paralyze their outcome and paralyze or restrict their cognitive faculties. हम उस डर से उनको suppress करना सिखा देते हैं. And in that burden, sometimes people move on also, but doesn't it hit back? Doesn't it come back and visit you at various other places? My point here is that we must appreciate and see how incomplete the term softness for us is. It's based upon fear. There is nothing wrong in being soft. When you let me take you to a different context. A man marries, okay? A man was raised to be the stoic, and then the wife is expecting, can't you be more soft and empathetic? As a mother, you'll tell the boy, why can't you be bloody more empathetic? Uski baat baith ke sun le, solve the conflict with empathy. How contradictory it could be, because you raise somebody with the belief that you got to display complete strength, and strength is projection, is masking emotion. And then after a few years, when the wife is expecting that express something, the man is confused. You just replace genders in both the places. It's very confusing for people because in some contexts, like personal, intimate relationships, such as spouses and parents, our expectation is to be vulnerable, but we want to train people to be strong elsewhere else. It's confusing for people.
So let me give you another aspect to it. I think a lot of times, because we focus so much on ourselves and our own emotions, we don't see the larger picture. If you take a look at spirituality or you take a look at a larger purpose, then your emotions become a very small thing in this big, big universe. We are a speck on a speck in this vast, vast, vast space where even the vast space is a speck. So I'm just wondering that by going so deep into your emotion, do you sometimes lose sight of the larger purpose, the larger divine, the larger spiritual path you could take, which could anchor you, rather than going around in circles about why am I feeling like this and what did my mother do that made me like this and what trauma did I go through? Just putting it out
Fair
there.
debate. And my answer to that is, see, zoning out and telling yourself that look at the larger picture or this small speck in this larger universe is an intellectual defense to ignore what the body is feeling. You are trying to tune out of what the body wants to tell you, elementary biofeedback, and then you're trying to be, that's for me pseudo spirituality, when you are trying to ridicule and make your emotion which is coming out of the body so small. That's number one. You can't ignore that. That's going to stay at a cellular level. Please understand the integrity and how emotion and what emotion is. What you
It gets
say,
hard-coded into your
it is
body.
at cellular level.
I agree.
The other part you said makes more sense. That's the asking why is it happening to you is intellectual fancy. You're just trying to cry victim. Absolutely call that out. Okay, even in therapies and coaching, we never ask a why question. Okay, you're not a student of psychology, so there is no point psychoanalyzing. Let that be done by an expert when you're on a therapy table. When you're doing it to yourself, that, oh mom, you did to me, that did to me, I'm introspecting and now visiting all the past dead graves. Of course, you're belonging to a school of thought which won't help. And that's the wrong kind of processing. So if people do that, you got to channelize and teach them. And that's emotional literacy. How do you work with past experiences? How do you work with bad experiences, broken cells, broken emotions? And that is emotional literacy. That brings you freedom. That brings you emotional and cognitive freedom both. But people are stuck in that vicious loop of curse and crib and reflecting back and overthinking, you did that to me, this. And which is why sometimes that form of processing, which is incident, anecdotal processing, doesn't work.
You know, I'm thinking of Sparta. Sparta, you know that when you talk about Spartans, they talked about a tough life.
Yeah.
They lived a tough life. They were a warrior race. And if they found that any one of them was not fit enough to be a warrior, they would pretty much let them go and fend for themselves and perhaps die in the wilderness.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they won wars that were inconceivable to win.
Absolutely.
They fought against all odds. Is that something that an organization can do without really looking at emotional literacy or emotions? Is it possible to say we have this crazy, crazy dream and we are going to put everything on the back burner and go on this charging speed to achieve what we want?
What a beautiful example you've given. And I think it marries both our worldviews. When you look at Sparta, you look at them from point of view of strength. And for me, that strength was their honor, valor, and pride. The last scene of Sparta movie, Gerald Butler, when he dies, he says it was honor serving next to you and dying next to you. And then the king says it was honor fighting with you. That's honor. Honor is an emotion. The community, which was Sparta, the strength was sense of belonging and the strength was built in honor. The secondary, or we can debate the sequence of logics, but yes, there was survival, there was strength, there was masculinity. But look at the behavior of the king with the queen. Look at what happens at the start of the movie when they throw this person into the well and says that you insulted my queen. That's also an emotion. An emotionally evolved, emotionally regulated, emotionally charged up community is always heading towards high performance, is always heading towards
Interesting.
chasing dreams. It wasn't dry and dead. There was an element of emotion. They didn't fight because they were strong. They didn't fight because there was muscle memory. They fought because there was an emotional connect with the person.
Well
And
said.
that is a lesson which organizations have to learn, that we
Well
all
said.
talk about purpose. Gen Z,
But do we feel that
do
purpose?
we feel that purpose?
Beautifully
Are we
said.
able
Yeah.
to articulate
Well
that
said.
purpose, not intellectually, but in the spirit,
Got it.
in the experience of the body? And
Got
that
it.
itself is an
Yes,
emotion.
yes.
And what comes in our way is our own eccentricities. What comes in our way is our own insecurities. Organizations, when they're able to...
And those are also emotions.
Absolutely.
The insecurities
So you
are
can't run
emotions
from
as well.
it. You
Yes.
can't run from it. Tell me one purpose which is intellectual. Strategy is intellectual. Culture is emotional. It's
But
built
purpose
upon
is
behaviors.
always emotional.
Purpose has to be emotional.
Yeah,
All
it ha-
science behind the why of doing by Simon Sinek was always this: the body tells you a sign. When an idea hits you, it's an emotion which is risen in the body. that आप सो नहीं पाते हैं, आप 24 घंटे उस बारे में सोच रहे हैं, आपको goosebumps आते हैं. It's an emotion in the body. If you could honor that, our problem is not emotion, Sheila. Our problem is destructive and negative emotions. We've learned to suppress. इंसान कभी खुशी से नहीं
And
भागा.
like your book.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why the book was written.
Yeah, and it's amazing because in your book, you have actually called out 21 negative emotions. No, wait,
30.
29 negative emotions. The last one being 30, the positive one.
Which is the most negative one.
That's oh,
That's why I wrote that. The need to be positive is the most
all
negative
the
emotion.
time. Yes, yes.
Toxic
yes.
positivity is the most
Yes,
negative emotion.
yes, 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 yes.
And that's
Wow.
in fact, that's also an intellectual strength. And I felt that we all suffer from it. So, घर गंदा है तो साफ किया जाता है, सजाया नहीं जाता. So your spiritual retreats and your meditation and your gratitude lists are not going to help you with what you have gone through. You'll only have to process it. in
You're
a-
just kind of putting the
You just
makeup
put-
on it.
Absolutely. And that's the reality, that it's another suppression. There is an academic debate that how people use meditation as a suppression mechanism. अभी कुछ निकल के आया है तो आपने ध्यान कर लिया, chanting कर ली, suppress कर लिया, breathing pattern शांत हो गया, oxygen supply prefrontal cortex में बढ़ गया. But जो हुआ, क्या वो गया?
नहीं.
3 दिन बाद, 4 दिन बाद, 3 महीने बाद वापस आएगा. And that's why patterns exists. That's why everything is in a pattern. Until the time you don't figure out the right way to process, you can't break that toxic pattern.
So here is a question that again I'm going to be,
Shoot.
like kind of poking you with. Is there bad therapy?
Of course, yes. There is good therapy and there is bad therapy. There are good therapists, bad therapists, good patients, bad patients. I agree.
Yeah,
with that.
because I feel that everybody today calls themselves a therapist.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing
Yeah.
a retreat.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing this alternative healing.
Sometimes they do more harm than good.
Yeah, so I mean, you do agree there could be bad therapy.
There could be bad therapy.
Okay, at least we agree
But
on
there
that.
are, again, there are behaviors. A bad therapist first needs to be an excellent patient to become a good therapist. A bad therapist who never visited her own caves, never went to the dark dungeons, never visited her own trauma, never
How will
learned
you
to
even-
process
exactly.
emotions.
Then you'll be operating from an area where
Self-care is very important
True.
for a therapeutic. In my journey of becoming a therapist, I felt that me putting myself on the therapy table and disciplining my interactions with my own therapist played a significant role. किताब पढ़ के, spiritual retreats करके, courses certification करके, आप बेहतर नहीं बनते, आप समझदार बनते हैं.
but to really explore the dark recesses of your own life.
When you
I
do
understand.
that to yourself, then you evolve because your emotional responses, your physiological responses, now you understand them better. So when you meet somebody at a therapy room and the person's talking a similar life, you are very aware of your own projections. You're very aware of, okay, I don't need to look through this through the eyes of what happened to me. That disconnection can't be intellectual. It's built upon very strong awareness.
I think what we have lost in India is this huge social structure that used to support us in terms of family friends, mohallas.
Yeah.
We've all become so driven by work. We've started living in nuclear families. You're spending 12 hours at work and 2 hours traveling. So by the time you come home, you just crash out.
Absolutely.
There's nobody that you can really reach out to. Do you believe that organizations should look at ways that social support structures can be created within an organization?
Absolutely.
But it also seems a little bit of an oxymoron, because at work, how are you going to create a social structure that's going to support you?
Yeah.
What is your thought around that?
See, efforts have already been taken. People understand isolation. People understand the wrath of nuclear uh, social systems. So efforts have been taken. Support groups have been offered to corporates, employee mental health champions, providers, organizations, startups are solving for this
But that
already.
seems like a balm. It just seems like a balm to a pain. Because I'll tell you what, going and talking to a counselor versus going and talking to my best friend
Yeah.
is very different.
Yeah.
We talk about learning with context, right? It's not just about picking up any program and rolling it out. A program works, an intervention works when there is an organizational context to it. The same way, these support systems will work only when there's a personal context to it. If I were to go to somebody and they didn't know me from Adam, and I was sitting and griping about my boss or my partner, they wouldn't even know me to give me the right advice. But if I were to go to my mom and say that, my husband does this, she'd say, you're also headstrong. You may be seeing things that he doesn't really mean. So, do you think it's even possible for
Well, it's true both ways, no, Sheila. Sometimes people don't want to go to friends, family members because they want to be heard objectively without judgment. And sometimes people shouldn't be told and given an advice. It could be your personal need that somebody give me an advice. But if you adopt coaching mindset or therapeutic mindset, you don't want to be the advisor to somebody. You want to create awareness so that people are able to see. And that's an art, that's a craft, which sometimes family members, close relationships don't know how to do it. So both are true. We must not judge the ways people take. We must be
Maybe
open,
both need to
flexible.
work together.
Absolutely.
Maybe-
Friendship solves for a different purpose. Close relationships solve for a different purpose. Therapy solves for a different purpose. When you grieve, when you're going through trauma, sometimes you don't feel understood. When you're going through a little bad year in life, and see, if you're going through something and the advice or the person who's in front of you does not meet the requirement, you will get to know. Then you will hunt for something else. You'll read a book, or then you will go for substance. You eat more. You take a holiday. तो छटपटाहट रहती है ना. Okay. So there is no guarantee that एक ही इंसान एक ही रिश्ता परिवार में या आपके social circle में सब solve करे.
That's
Absolutely
true.
no guarantee.
That's true. I agree.
All right. And sometimes people also evolve. Like I was very close to my school friends, but I evolved. They evolved. Now when I call them back for an advice, I don't feel the vibe. I don't think they get me. I don't think that they understand my bandwidth. So, but when I speak to my therapist, I understand that my therapist understands me better. So I planted systematically a person who understands me. I enjoy safe space. Darkest, deepest secrets can be shared with that person. आप बताइए that is 100% of your life can ever be shared with anyone in the family. We are always masked.
No, but I can share 100% of my life with many people in parts. So,
Yes.
so I have,
Accumulated 100%.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So I have a friend that I will say something about
Yes,
work, but I have
absolutely.
another
I
friend
agree.
I will talk about my most critical personal problems. I have an uncle that I will reach out
Absolutely.
to for something else.
And similarly, one of them is a therapist. See, this also brings to the surface a debate that how India and how sometimes population, your age, my age, including me, we look at therapies. We have a very strong value judgment. We equate that going to a therapist is a sign of weakness. Now, when a 20-year-old is going to a therapist, that's a sign of courage. We must celebrate. They're opening up. You look at the dichotomy. तुम बात नहीं करते, तुम बोलते नहीं, तुम अपने एक्सप्रेस नहीं करते, फिर वो थेरेपी के पास जाना चाहता है, तो हम थेरेपिस्ट के पास जाके क्या करेगा? अब हमारे परिवार में लोग थेरेपिस्ट के पास जाएंगे. And then you realize tech enters, and then they go to Chat GPT.
And that is a great segue into the next
Yeah.
segment. With generative AI coming in, with bots coming in, do you believe that processing of emotions can be helped by technology, or do you think it's a bridge too far?
No, it's not a bridge too far. I don't know about processing of emotions because a part of processing of emotion requires physical presence. When I'm crying, I would want you to see me in my eye, and I would want, when I see you and the breathing pattern changing, my mirror neurons tell me that Sheila is feeling what I'm feeling. Sheila is empathizing with me. So a part of therapeutic space And therapeutic spaces are not unknown to us. जब हम पहाड़ों में जाते हैं, नदियों को देखते हैं, तो कुछ लोग क्यों रो देते हैं? We're not unfamiliar to the therapeutic experience the body goes through. So I need people around me to feel safe. You cannot afford to. They might get there, but you cannot afford to operate at a level where our human interactions are without humans. Chat GPT, generative AI, the usage of data has a value to help you understand yourselves better by asking provocative questioning. Okay, I can lean on the data of the years of misery people have gone through, pinpoint, can study speech patterns, and also tell you that there might be a
But you
suicidal
still need a
ideation.
human being
Yes,
to
symptomatic
resonate.
diagnostics would be possible, can
Yeah.
feed into the data of your SpO2, stress, oxygen, biomarkers, and tell you. Sometimes, like the coaching bots, can also duplicate and learn how a coaching methodology is. But the fact of the matter is that they could talk to us in a fashion which seems so appealing to us that might confuse that,
Actually,
shit,
you're
this
right.
is real.
Because, I mean, when you talk to chat, it makes it out like you're the world's best person. Yeah, but then
And that's isolation.
Yeah,
That's
that is
digital
isolation.
Yes.
Because it's, for me, that's not understanding. I think a large part of understanding is also challenging.
Yeah.
Is also showing different, like we had a guest earlier on the show who talked about different vantage points.
No,
So-
and that could also be possible. ChatGPT could do that also. We are deploying a tool, at least planning to deploy a tool, which has replicated the problem statement of coaching and has created a coach bot and can be offered to many people, okay, with psychometric instruments, read personality profiles, nudging, questioning, all of it, shows you perspective, understand everything possible. The institutionalization, the scale is also possible. So the possibility is there. There's also an organization which has created a therapy bot where it could be act as a therapist, would look
But
at all
that's
the
so
biomarkers.
scary.
Actually, not
That is
because
so, that is so scary.
you see that's
Because
where,
if human emotion was so simple, then we wouldn't be talking about this for this entire podcast.
but that's the evolution, and we can be scared or we can adopt to it. Okay.
You know, I want to stop you just there. We are talking about young people becoming so vocal about saying, yes, I do need help and I'll go. And we are commending that. We are saying it's brave. But take a look at the same thing, at the same time, what we are doing. When we communicate, we use emoticons or emojis, right? And the emoji doesn't let you evaluate the nuance of the emotion. So you're sending out this emoji, which I'm sending it to Ankit, and it's got this red face, and I'm angry. But I'm not able to articulate
What I feel.
kind of anger
Anger.
I'm
Yeah.
facing. So imagine if you start using technology to start looking at emotions and therapy. I'm just wondering whether we're giving up what is human.
It
A
will be
red-faced emoji doesn't tell you whether I'm livid, whether I'm irritated, whether I'm angry, whether I'm upset. It doesn't tell you that. We're not able to process emotions because we've started, it's almost like we're going back to the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
See, it's a good use case which you've pointed out. But in an organizational context, in relationship context, our skill of having conversations, specifically difficult, confrontational in nature conversation, has to evolve. We had to become more comfortable with the discomfort. Chat GPT could be there, could give you perspective, insight, data, diagnostic, symptomatic, could also run a two-way dialogue, but it's not going to evolve your relationship with your team member, with your boss, with your partner, etc., etc. That heavy lifting only you'll have to do. Okay, maybe you will have an alter ego Chat GPT, the other person will have an alter ego Chat GPT, they both meet in metaverse. That also won't help. The heavy lifting
Absolutely.
still has to be done
Done
by the
by
mind,
us.
body, and spirit by two people talking.
Yes.
I could go bitch about my wife to the Chat GPT, and the Chat GPT could tell me whatever about my wife, but I will still have to tell her that I felt hurt.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and this
yeah.
this incident happened with me. I hope my nephew doesn't kill me for this. My nephew calls me one day and he had some, I think, a bad breakup or something. But he wanted to know, before having the bad breakup, he wanted to know if the girl was really interested in him or not. So he took the chat dump from WhatsApp and he uploaded this on Chat GPT and asked Chat GPT, can you do an analysis of all the conversations we've done and tell me if the girl is interested? Chat GPT ने बोला that by the nature of responses, it seems that you are more inclined towards the girl than girl. वो बेचारा घबरा गया, and then he calls me one night and I was giving him left, right and center. You've got a therapist at home, you're talking to chat GPT. But the problem I realized there, that's my go-to response is only wrong. My first go-to response should be empathy. I'm feeling jealous and envious that why did he go to chat GPT? इसे मैं आया तो आपके पास अब बात करने के लिए, उसने ये बताया. But you realize that
No, but that's dangerous.
that's
right?
dangerous.
That's
no?
very dangerous.
That's dangerous. So then
because
I'm saying that
human relations require a lot of navigation. It can't be like chat. Tell me, should I be with her? Should I walk out?
So Gen Z is finding it difficult as a go-to response to have an interpersonal conversation. They find it easy to ask a non-personal, impersonal.
Yeah, and that's
hence
scary.
I'm saying that might as well adopt coach. Might as well adopt the bots. Might as well train them to have conversation. At least somebody is having conversation with them, rather than living in an ideal, foolish world that come to us kids, come to us kids, come to us kids. Let them go speak to whoever. You adopt the technology and then build on that. And that's where the marriage of tech and human conversations is going to be.
So maybe the future of emotional well-being is really going to be hybrid. Part bot and part human.
It is already. You look at the gadgets, look at the ultra human ring, look at what fitness trackers are doing to you. They've entered your life slowly. What is it that you can't measure right now? And 10 years back, nothing was getting measured. My SpO2, my stress levels, my sleep cycles, my caffeine intake, my calorie intake, everything which affects my emotional well-being is in data, in dashboards every single day.
Got it. Wow.
So life has changed already. It's just a matter of time now we learn to use that insight and do habit formation.
It's been such an interesting conversation. So my takeaways from them are many. Emotions are here to stay. We need to make sure that we sit with those emotions, process those emotions, and it is critical to have an organization that's emotionally literate to be able to become even more high performing. Ankit, thank you so much. This has been such an interesting session. It's been enlightening, it's been challenging, and I'm so glad you made the time to be with us. In a world that often tells us to toughen up and move on, Ankit Jhamb invites us to pause, feel, and process. His message is not one of softness, but strength. A strength that comes not from suppressing emotion, but engaging with it. Ankit reminds us that emotions aren't a detour, they're the road itself. Whether you're building a business, managing a team, or trying to stay human in a high-speed world, perhaps the real blueprint is emotional clarity. The People Blueprint is on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us. Until next time, stay curious and get future ready.